We have everyone with us? I see Casella, Murphy, Wynn, and Oak Ridge. Great. All right, and are we recording, Emma? I didn't see that. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jen Heaton-Jones. I am the current CRC president, and I want to welcome you all here to our second session of What's In, What's Out. Today's session is going to focus on paper and fibers. I apologize for anyone who was with us last week, but just in case you're new, I'm going to go over a couple of slides just so you know where we're heading with all of this and why we're doing what we're doing. So we will have additional sessions on April 24th that will focus on glass and metal. On May 8th, we're going to talk about contamination and hard to manage material for our MRF operators here in Connecticut. And on May 22nd, we're going to shift from single stream to organics. So the whole purpose of this series of What's In, What's Out is to train the trainer. It's for all of our Connecticut recycling coordinators to be able to interface with the public and answer questions and have a better vocabulary of what's happening with what can and cannot go in our single stream so that we can send good quality material to our material recovery facilities. Because in reality, this is often what we see. This is curbside collection at one of our transfer stations, and we know that bad recycling habits equal poor quality, resulting in higher tip fees. So it's a benefit for all of us, including our material recovery facility. So today we're going to talk about the Universal Recycling Guide created by the Recycle CT Foundation, and really pleased to be able to have Cheryl Baldwin here with us today from Connecticut DEP, who will be moderating. Do you want to give us a wave, Cheryl? And then for our material recovery facilities, I want to welcome Casella, Mike Cromwell, from Wynn, Keith LeBron, from Murphy Road, Brett, and I'm going to mess up your last name, Richatelli, and Oak Ridge, Joe Serdone. All right, great. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being with us. And I'm going to entertain you with a few moments video, just in case we have any recycling coordinators out there that have not seen how a material recovery facility works and operates. This is going to shoot us to YouTube, so bear with us. And give me a thumbs up if you
And welcome back to this U.S. Open office plan.
Miller just lobbed a message way over Jones's head using some technical jargon.
Residential single-stream material is brought to the MRF and dumped on the tipping floor. It is then loaded into a large feeding container at the start of the system. Advantages of the drum feeder include improved productivity, more effective pre-sort, and even flow of material. While the machine feeds the system, the loader operator is free to perform other duties like organizing the tipping floor. From the drum feeder, the material is inclined to the first pre-sort station, where workers remove large, bulky items. From this pre-sort, the material drops onto an OCC screen. Smaller, pliable material falls through the stars, while larger, rigid material like cardboard bounces over them. The smaller material that falls through drops onto a glass breaker fine screen to break and remove the glass and other 2-inch minus sized material from the stream. The broken glass moves to a glass cleanup system for further separation to make it clean and sellable. The system screens material into 4 fractions: oversized, fines, heavies, and lights. Remaining material now goes to a second pre-sort. Workers remove any small trash items, grocery bags, and small cardboard that fell through the OCC screen. Removing film and small OCC prior to the single-stream screens is key to the system's success. The material drops onto an anti-wrapping ONP screen. This is the first of 3 screens designed to separate fiber from containers. The anti-wrapping feature dramatically reduces maintenance. After several hours of operation, the screen has virtually no material wrapped around its shafts. Large 2D fiber is scalped up and over the screen and goes through quality control, where contamination is removed by hand. The clean fiber end product flows into a storage conveyor for future baling. This process is repeated on 2 more screens with progressively tighter spacing to maximize fiber recovery. Each of the 3 screens has its own QC line with access to a conveyor that takes any flat containers back to the container line. The 3D objects left on the 3rd screen bounce back and are conveyed to an optical sorter for final fiber removal. The Tomra AutoSort 4 recovers any remaining fiber prior to the container sort line. It identifies 2D sheet paper as well as 3D boxboard. Ejected fiber goes back to the mixed paper QC line for recovery. The remaining material is conveyed to the container recovery line, which is comprised of 3 additional AutoSort 4s. The containers then travel under an overbelt magnet. This powerful magnet lifts all ferrous cans from the transfer conveyor and discharges them into a storage bin for baling. The material that passes under the magnet drops onto a manual container sort line. With all other commodities recovered, the remaining material drops off the manual sort belt onto an eddy current separator. The eddy current propels aluminum cans over a separation gate and onto a quality control conveyor. The clean aluminum is then transported to the appropriate bin via an air transport system. The final recovery station is located on the main platform to allow one sorter the chance to recover any fibers or containers. All stored material goes through 2 balers, including a high-speed, no-shear Bolograph HBC 120S. Both machines are capable of baling all commodities to achieve true baler redundancy. Contact us for more information on this system or for a tour.
Thank you for letting me entertain you. I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl, and we'll get this party started.
Thanks, Jen. Apologies. I have way too many windows open. All right. Well, thanks for having me, CRC, and thanks for everybody who's joining us today to talk about paper and fiber. Oh, I apologize. I had glass on there as well, but that is the next session. So I'm just going to do a quick overview. I did this last time as well, but for those who weren't able to join us, I just wanted to review. So the waste characterization that the department did in 2015 basically shows that over 50% of our single stream or mixed recycling stream is 50%. So we have 55% here. So of course, an estimate, but basically tells us that most of the materials coming in are paper and fiber. We can also see that big red pie chart, which is 18.2% contamination. And while this was in 2015, before we did the what's in, what's out, my guess is that we're still probably hovering between 15 and 20% contamination, which is very sad. From the waste characterization, the 5 top materials that were identified as contaminants were plastic bags, bottle caps, shredded paper, bagged material, and things that tangle. So of course, last time we talked about plastics. Everybody knows about plastic bags and tangling. Bottle caps are too small. Shredded paper is too tiny and rips apart, makes a big mess. Bag materials are obvious. It's bagged materials. And of course, things that tangle is very problematic. So back, I think it was 2017, I started meeting with the material recovery facility operators as well as deep staff. This was in preparation for the Recycle CT What's In, What's Out campaign. We knew that there was no use in doing any education and outreach to our residents in Connecticut unless we all had some agreement about what was on a list of materials. We found that some towns had completely different opinions about what should be in and what should be out, even though they were bringing it to the same facility. We used these guidelines, these questions to help guide the conversation. And we asked about every item and material or product we could think about that is made out of glass, metal, plastic, or paper. And the first question we posed is this item harmful to your employees or cause a safety concern? As we saw in the video, there's a lot of manual labor, both at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we want to make sure that things that are coming in on the line are safe for employees. Next question we ask is this item going to shut down or harm equipment? Usually we think of tanglers, plastics, and sadly glass can also give wear and tear. But basically we wanted to pose the question, what item is coming on the line that could actually cause harm to your equipment? And then, does it reduce the value of your commodity? I think we're going to be talking about that particular aspect in this conversation today, because sometimes things can really cause problems to the value of the fiber market when there's things mixed in and mistaken for paper. So we want to make sure that those commodities that the MRF operators are selling have value so they can sell them, because of course contamination reduces that value and then it becomes problematic in terms of selling that material. Just a reminder, recycling is actually required by law. Everyone must recycle these items. And if we break it apart, we'll see that the blue box materials or the mixed recycling program is pretty much half of the materials that are required by law. And you'll notice it's also glass and metal food and beverage containers. And it's plastic containers and plastic containers. So we really focus on the container aspect for those materials. But in terms of fiber, corrugated cardboard, box board, newspapers, magazines, white and colored office paper, and has been since 2012. In terms of the first law in 1989, it included cardboard, but all these newspapers, and boxboard magazines and colored office paper and white office paper was added in 2012. And so this is the guide to recycling, what's in and what's out for paper. We have cardboard and boxboard. You'll notice we have food and beverage cartons. These are not required by law, but our facilities are willing to accept them. We've sort of lumped everything in terms of junk mail, magazines and newsprint, office paper, and pizza boxes. And then what's out includes this list here: gift wrap and gift bags, ice cream containers, paper cups, shredded paper, takeout food containers, and tissue paper. All right, deep breath. Okay, guys, unmute yourself. Here's, as Mike said last time, it's a quiz. He didn't know it was going to be a quiz. All right, so these are the kind of questions that we all get a lot of. What about tissue boxes? And we know that the fiber for a box, of course, is boxboard, but a lot of the tissue boxes now have this little plastic thing around it to keep that tissue paper upright. So I see Brett and Mike are unmuted. What do you think? What's the issue with tissue boxes? Is there an issue?
Mike, you want to lead the way on the first one?
Sure. After the training session, I have complete pre-quiz training session. I have complete internet chaos. Awesome. I think when you look at fiber overall, you have to take in mind too that when you go to the next step at the mill and they're using their water process and their screens, the mixed paper, boxboard, newspaper, they have a high recovery rate compared to cardboard. So they're going to lose probably upwards of 25%. And I haven't been to a mill in probably 20 years. So hopefully it's changed. Their process, they're going to lose about 25% of their product. I particularly don't have an issue with the plastic liner. I'm sure I'm going to get some disagreement. And just for that effect, the water situation is going to separate all of it in their process. Just going in, just realize that, yeah, we want to recycle everything we can, but we got to capture it first. But then the next step of the process, you're gonna have some losses there, and with the contamination of the process. So this, I don't have an issue with.
Yeah, I'm on the inside as well. I think it's similar to tape on a cardboard box. They know what's coming.
I'm afraid to ask Joe.
I'm in agreement with it. It's acceptable. That plastic on there would be something that you would work out with where it's going finally, right? You're not going to get an exuberant amount of tissue boxes to the point where it's going to contaminate your load, right? All of us that operate recycling facilities, if I got a truckload of these, could be an issue, right? But the 15 to 20 of these that you'll get every 6 hours isn't going to contaminate it. Now, with that said, when you pull the top of that off, that's going to end up in the garbage. That's going to fall through the screen. So every one of those boxes has a pull tab. That pull tab is going to end up falling through the glass breaker and going out the other end. It's not going to make it through the screen. So that part of it would be garbage. Because we're not going to be able to capture that, but the box itself is fine.
All right. For folks that didn't understand that, and I don't buy tissue, so I have no idea. I use a handkerchief, but you're saying there's a pull tab, so it's a complete box, and you pull off the tab to identify and show the plastic that then opens up the tissue, and that little extra piece should go in the trash.
Correct. That'll just fall through all of our. If it makes it through the glass breaker, it's just going to fall through our next set of screens. It'll 100% fall through the polisher.
And Keith, you have anything you want to add to this conversation?
No, I mean, you guys said it 100% correctly.
Great. So so this is sort of a similar one. People still ask about this. Envelopes, plastic little cellophane pieces, in or out?
It's in. Again, the amount of plastic that you see there that you would need to contaminate a load, you would need probably about 4.5 tons of that dumped at once at your plant. So the onesies, twosies, back in the day, if you're trying to go to China, no. If you're trying to go to just a normal place that takes paper, 100%.
Yeah.
And these are things that all manage right through it. So, and to Joe's point, there's not enough created for it to be a problem.
Great.
Yep, I'm in total agreement. I think it's very similar to the tissue box.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, thanks. All right, so we've talked about little things. These are really bad images, but Post-it notes and receipts.
Out. They're the same as shredded paper. They're going to end up all over the place. So there's twofold issues with these. Number one, they're not heavy enough to travel through the system properly, right? So the screens that you hit are running at about 1,500 RPMs that create kind of like a wind tunnel, right? So it's going to do the same thing that it does with shredded paper. It's going to shoot it all over our plant. The problem is when this starts rolling through the plant, right? And all of us on this call that are at the MRFs, we've all had the plastic bag full of receipts, right? If it makes it past your pre-sort, it hits that screen and then it's a confetti party all over the place. If they do go through the system, they're again going to end up in your glass pile or coming out through the polisher into your residue line.
And if it's stuck to a paper inside, a folder,
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Going. it's going to the next step, and it's probably not gonna make that cut at the mill.
All right, Brett, Keith, no, nothing to add?
No, I think they're right on. And I think also with receipts, the weather doesn't help. If it gets wet out there, it'll stick to anything.
Well, that's something that we need to talk about in this with the fiber as well as the moisture.
Oh, yeah. We'll ask you about that, Joe. All right, so spiral wound containers. So when we first created the universal list, I had never heard this term before, so it was a great new term for me. And it includes everything from oatmeal containers to containers used for dried fruit and nuts, sometimes coffee and frozen juice. So, so what is it about spiral wound containers that make them problematic?
I think one of the first problems is you have two products within the container, so it's either gonna be.
Oil.
Yeah, oil as well, but you're either gonna have the paper in the metal or the metal in the paper.
So inside, so if you look at your Minute Maid one, that's cardboard with a type of a plastic. I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like a cat food container. It's got the plastic coating on the inside, right? So although, you know, the same thing with the cat food containers, it is 100% recyclable, but it's two different commodities forced into one, right? So again, an exuberant amount of those they get upset about, right? The planners, right? Most of the planners inside has a foil lining inside it.
So we get a lot of, you know, when we do education, I'll use the oatmeal container as an example. That sometimes the oatmeal containers are really just pure box board, and the only plastic is sometimes a little lip. And so people are like, well, if I rip out the plastic lip, will you take the oatmeal container?
Again, I don't think you have to get that crazy. Like, we want to make it very
people
easy.
do.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but you want to make it the harder you make recycling, the less you're going to get the recycling. So if there's just a plastic lip on there, that's no big deal. The top should be taken off, right? Because the top would probably be polypro, right? It'd probably be a number 5, right? Which would get picked up by the optics. That'll make the ride. It's the same, you know, we call it tubs and lids, right? So you should separate it. But the plastic, it's the same as an envelope. That little bit of plastic isn't going to cause that big of a problem.
Okay, so the center piece where you have the frozen orange juice, what about the metal top? Even though we're not talking about metal, people want to deconstruct their containers, the real uber recyclers. Would you accept that small piece of metal?
No, that'll fall through.
It doesn't make the rock. It doesn't make the way up.
That small piece of metal won't make it through the glass breaker. If it does make it through the glass breaker, it will not make it through anybody's polishing screens.
Yeah, it's little.
Okay,
Yeah, but
thanks.
if it does, I mean, yeah, we're all gonna be standard, right? If it does, I know that in our systems that we developed, you know, we've also come to the realization that we needed, specifically in our glass systems, we've needed the small cross conveyor magnets for the tin lids and the small eddy currents, because it is embedded to it's so small. Typically, it will go into the glass, and you want to clean up the glass, but you got two valuable commodities, so it's a little bit of a catch-22 with those. But yeah, they're gonna fall through the screens for sure. But where do they fall through, and how's your system set up?
Yeah, if you can get it to the crossbelt magnet on your glass breakers, you know what I mean? You'll catch the paper clips, you'll catch those type of things. That's if it gets in there, right? It 9 times out of 10, that'll take a ride sitting on something else and end up in your bigger screens or your polishing screen and just fall right through.
Okay, great. All right, Brett, you mentioned lots of tape. So people always ask, how much tape is too much tape?
I think it's just within reason. I don't see a ton of complaints about tape on the boxes from the mill. I think it's, you know, kind of a nature of the beast thing.
Yeah, don't make it look like a mummy and we're good.
Yeah.
No other comments? Okay. If nobody's ever been to a paper mill, Mike, you said it's been a number of years. It's been a number of years for me too. But I remember the arm that's in the swirling vat and it
Yeah.
captures all that plastic and it kind of gets stuck on it. So I can imagine tape would be captured. It's the small little pieces that I wonder about. So we have had a lot of questions recently about books. Now, originally when we created the list, soft paper backs were fine, but that hardcover is not so easy. So we've always said just put in a few at once. And of course, we want people to reuse them. So often what's coming through is probably textbooks because those are difficult to reuse. Where are you at in terms of books these days?
We're fine with soft cover, and for hard cover, we prefer it removed.
Same here. Soft cover's fine. Hard cover, just rip it off.
Yep, agreed. And I don't think it's too much of an ask to not to get into crazy recyclers.
We managed through it here, so same concept.
Yeah. The infamous pizza box. So I used to love doing education before because depending on the town, it was like rip the lid off, everything goes out. It depends on how much grease. A spot of grease is too much. 3 spots is too much. 5 spots are okay. So when we created the list, because fiber markets were really good at that time, we just said everything was in. So where are you at in terms of pizza boxes?
Just don't have the crust or the plastic lining in it, and we're good.
Yeah,
Right?
the problem with pizza boxes isn't the grease in the pizza box. It's that there's 45 pieces of crust, 15 cigarette butts, and a
Napkins.
soda inside it. That's the problem. Like if it matters where your commodity's coming from, right? If you're coming from a college, right, your pizza boxes are terrible, right? And I think it falls back on, you know, what your communication is to the people that you're picking up, right? If you're doing a university, your pizza boxes are a Pandora's box. It's just the way it's
Wow,
gonna
I've
be.
never heard that. So they basically use it as a trash receptacle and then put the whole thing in recycling.
Correct.
With cigarette butts and everything. That's a big
Yeah,
deal.
and you can tell by the panel, everybody in the panel smiling, right? Because everybody in the panel, we've all been through it, right? We get the pizza box, it hits the screen and there's pieces of pizza everywhere. There's, you know, you name it, it's shoved in there.
Maybe some ranch in there.
Yeah, there's ranch dressing in there. It's all over the place now. So that the biggest thing is keep it clean. The pizza box picture that you have on the left, we're all pretty good with that, right? It's the pizza box on the right with the plastic liner, the pieces of crust and whatever other things are inside it. That's where we start to run into an issue.
And really, it's just the repetition. I think that's why we're participating in doing this with great intentions. It's the repetition of the education. It's just we just can't stop. We just got to keep using the sledgehammer until we get it right. That's all. But it really hasn't changed in 27 years, in case anybody's asking.
And in addition to that, I just wanted to add, you know, the wax cardboard, you know, that's a problem for us too. So, you know, I don't know if you were going to mention that or whatnot, but that's sometimes people don't even know the difference between the wax cardboard and they just throw it into the recycling, but you know, that's not recyclable.
Right. And could you explain where most of the wax cardboard comes from so that our
Grocery
educators can
stores.
understand?
So grocery stores use the wax cardboard on vegetables primarily, right? So when grocery stores get a delivery of lettuce, that cardboard that they use, it's got the two holes on either side to pick it up. It's got the wax liner on it because of the moisture that comes from the vegetables, right? The cleaning of the vegetables or whatever they do with the vegetables. So you're predominantly going to see the wax cardboard come from grocery stores, any bodegas, anything that does any type of vegetable, you're going to see the wax cardboard.
So we might not see that much of it in the residential sector, but
Well,
it's
you
good
will
for
see it.
recycling cord.
You will see it in the
I was gonna say-
residential section with the BJ's and the Costco's and the things like that, right? Because they reuse those cardboard boxes to put your groceries in. So the
okay.
the homeowner is loading up their BJ's order inside those boxes and don't realize that that's wax cardboard in there, and they throw it right in their recycling. So the education for it has to go all across the board.
Wow, that's really helpful to know, Joe. Any other thoughts about cardboard? Thanks for bringing it up, Keith. All right. So takeout containers. I mean, the list, we say no, 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 no. Mainly because they're always contaminated with food. What are the issues with paper takeout containers? Or maybe there are no issues, you never get them because we do such great educational programming.
We get them. The biggest issue with takeout containers is they're a garbage can.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for all of us that are on this call that operate the biggest. So the one you have in the middle, the clamshell one, that's paper. You'll know right off the bat because you'll see the stain on it. Right, you'll see the stain on it, and that stain 9 times out of 10 means there's still product inside there, right? So with those takeout containers, normally you get that takeout container with a 12-ounce soda bottle with it as well. So you get done with it, the soda bottle fits perfectly inside there. Whatever you didn't finish is inside there, and it's Pandora's box. It's keeping those clean. Right, that's the bigger issue.
It's almost guaranteed to have residue, like Joe said. There's no escaping the residue on the takeout boxes.
And it's terrible, right? It's terrible for us, right? It causes vermin, right? It contaminates everything once it breaks open, right? So, you have somebody that gets takeout from an Italian restaurant, there's spaghetti in it, they leave half the spaghetti in it, it hits, you see it go by, it hits the screen, now it opens up, now that spaghetti just contaminated everything that was on that screen.
Yeah, Joe, last time you said I love the quote, you said recyclables shouldn't smell.
No.
And so for educators that missed it a couple of weeks ago, that's a really good slogan to help with messaging, is that recyclables shouldn't smell.
When you go into a recycling plant, the only thing that technically should smell is any natural milk jugs that you have, right? But even that, the smell. If you're standing at the opening of your tip floor and it smells like garbage, it's garbage.
Garbage.
Yeah. All right. Amazon mailers.
Ugh. Out.
So actually they're in because you all said that they were in a while back. So, except for the center one, sorry, the center one with the bubble wrap is out. But the new Amazon mailer, especially since it came out and we asked Jonathan, of course, who's not here, he always responds first. And it was decided it was in.
The one
How
on
are
the
these
left,
causing you problem, Joe?
the one on the left is in, the one on the middle is out.
Yeah.
There's
Correct.
another one that's out there that has some sort of weird filler in it.
Oh, the fiber padding.
Yeah, and some of that was out because some of that was like almost like a fiberglass
That's right.
filler.
I couldn't get a photo of that, but the one that's on the left, that is the new Amazon. So people may have a stockpile of old ones, but it's my understanding that Amazon is completely moved to these flat paper ones. And they do have a weird white papery starchy thing in it, but I'm hoping that doesn't cause any problems for you.
No,
No.
we're okay with, the one on our left is in.
The
Yeah.
problem is exactly what you said, right? It's the same exact packaging. One's out, one's in, right? It's
Mhm.
going to confuse people. So, I mean, I don't know how everybody else wants to handle it, but if you're saying the one on the left is out, you're getting the one on the middle.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
just the way it works.
that's a great point.
So all paper, we usually say in, if there's any plastic, and some of them have a different kind of padding, as you said, are out.
Yeah, I hope for the best.
Yeah, and then the Amazon mailers that are all bubble wrap with an outward film is collected in the wrap program for people listening. So, for me, I like to emphasize that a lot of things are recyclable and that what we're talking about today are things that are acceptable. And they're acceptable because the MRF operators can process the material and sell the material. When we first created the list, I discovered that a lot of municipalities were saying, but I want you to take my styrofoam, but I want you to take my pots and pans, but I want you to take. And what I learned is that, of course, these are private businesses. They want your business. They want to serve you and service your community, but they want the contract too. And so often they would agree to take things because they wanted the contract, they wanted your business. And so as municipalities, it's important for you to be aware that you need to abide by the list because it will ensure that they have an easier time processing the materials and thus selling them. And so I'm just going to remind educators that we recycle in different ways, that there's lots of different programs, that we collect materials and have lots of parallel activities, and that the mixed recycling program is just one. And that we need to make sure that our residents understand that there are different tracks and different streams for different materials. So, I don't know if I have any more.
Since
Oh, yeah.
Since you have that slide up, can we address moisture now?
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, what's the largest contaminant for your fiber? Is it moisture or is it something else?
For me, it's since coming to Connecticut, it's been moisture. And the reason why it's been moisture is because of the recycling bin that you have in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there needs to be a bigger push, right? All the operators on here know you're looking, people that come in, they want 10% moisture, right? You're never going to achieve 10% moisture in the Northeast. So we talk through it, right? But we're not helping ourselves as a state by still continuing to allow people to use that blue bin. That blue bin, although the glass, the metal, the aluminum, the plastic, everything in there is great. But if you get any amount of rain that hits that blue bin, then what you essentially did was made that fiber into a contaminant. Because what happens is if it gets saturated and then it hits those screens, it gets destroyed and then it ends up all over all of our other products. So, I mean, since coming to the state of Connecticut, one of the things that I've seen here is there needs to be a bigger push for moisture. We need clean, dry fiber, not soaking wet fiber. And we're going to encounter, some moisture because of the compaction of the trucks that are used to pick up the recycling. We understand that. But when it rains on a Tuesday and your recycling pickup is on Wednesday morning and you put it out the night before and it's in that blue bin or it's in a tote with no lid on it, that's garbage to all of us on this panel. So when we talk about what's in, what's out, we need to do a bigger push here that those blue bins are out. They shouldn't be allowed anymore.
I mean, that's a great point. Let's not sell ourselves short though, Joe. So it's at least 6 months of the year where it's dry. So we're just to narrow it down. But it's not just that too. Transfer stations, it's the handling of the open top containers, 100-yard walking floors. It is a big problem. It really is. And
Yeah.
I mean, last year was kind of brutal with rain, so I don't know if we're gonna expect the same amount record setting. So it just adds to it. It wreaks havoc. And then if you ship overseas or you ship even locally, they just slam you with, and rightfully so, with 15, 20, 25% moisture readings. We all have our moisture probes that we use, constantly taking that and trying to get under that 10 or 12% standard. It's a challenge for sure.
And moisture has become such an issue inside our field that, you're talking about moisture probes. They've actually come up now and they have a different moisture probe where they can put it right on the side of the bale and read the middle of the bale, because the sticks that we used to use didn't go in far enough. So they've upped their game, and we're not running the race at the same pace.
Keith, Brett,
I'm
you
in
have any
total,
comments?
I'm in total agreement on moisture. It's an inescapable problem right now. I think it was exasperated by the last year we had, but it's a major challenge about how the materials get into us, or where it's being stored, and who knows if someone's even keeping their blue bin inside for the other 6 days of the week.
Correct.
We didn't even venture to think that it's permanently outside.
And the transfer station point is a great point too. When you go around to these transfer stations, how many of them have 40-yarders and 30-yarders with no cover? No, nothing, right? They think putting a tarp over that is going to be sufficient, and it's not. Moisture is a huge deal. Like, if, all of us on this call that try to move that product, when you go from a 12% moisture to a 23% moisture, you got a huge problem.
In some cases, it's actually higher too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, we make reference to last year. So if you talk to just the burn plant, right, they had issues burning our MSW because the moisture was so bad, right, going into the plant, that they couldn't fire the burners. Kevin or Keith, I'm sure right, that MSW that came in last year was wetter than it's ever been. Right. And that's because we're not paying attention to it on the residential side, the transfer station side, on moisture going into everything that we do, right? Recycling and MSW. We need to push covers. And we honestly, if we're going to talk about what's in, what's out, that blue bin needs to be out.
So we usually, when we think of contamination, we think of, a certain material or a certain product. And I love that you brought up sort of the weather or the environmental conditions. Are there other conditions that impact you, or other materials that you would say are a high contaminant that we need to make sure recycling coordinators are aware of?
Snow and rain. You get the 100-yard walking floor that comes in, and all of us have,
Moisture.
Brett and Keith and Mike, everybody's seen it, right? You get the 100-yard walking floor that comes in and there's 3 inches of snow on top of it, because they didn't tarp the load the night before, nor did they clean it off.
Yeah, right now, I mean, the elements are definitely a big deal, especially, at the transfer stations here, Mercs, we're taking some of these stuff that, it does become a big deal, right? Aside from that, I don't know about you, but even with the cardboard, a lot of customers, a lot of residents leave the styrofoam packaging inside of the cardboard boxes. That creates a nuisance, because now once it goes to the pre-sort, to the screens, the OCC screens, now all of that styrofoam gets released, and then it's just, like Joe said earlier, a confetti party. So that's
And what
another.
happens with that is it's even worse, because static electricity kicks in. So the static electricity draws that styrofoam. They turn into little pebbles, and that styrofoam gets drawn to everything and sticks to everything. So everybody that's on this call, every December since we started doing this, Brett's laughing. We stare into the sky, because we know every TV box is going to be filled with styrofoam. Every kid's toy box is going to be filled with styrofoam. We have to do a better job of educating and enforcing that styrofoam's out.
Any other thoughts? Okay. Some questions are coming in, but before they do, I am just going to ask you some questions about markets and what you're selling. I know that we understand that you process the materials and you put them into bales. And I'm curious, how many grades of fiber how many grades do you follow? How many grades do you sell of paper? And how are the markets doing for you? And then on the same side, how does the contamination, or in this case, moisture, impact the value? Will they still buy it at a reduced rate? How does it impact you economically? Or do they reject it? Keith, why don't you start us off?
In some cases, they reject it. And that's a big deal. Now we have to incur all of these costs, rejection fees, and like moisture, again, it is a huge problem. And so we do about 5 or 6 different grades over here. I don't know what the rest of the guys do. But again, moisture, if it's because what happens is when they open up the container, it has it's almost like a wet, a really bad smell to it, and it gets rejected outright. So, yeah, moisture is a big deal.
The times are different, right? So you have to be completely honest in what you're putting out there, right? The 1992 of, it's paper and you had 40% outthrows and it is gone, right? So you have to be honest when they come into your plant. And if they say, oh, we only accept stuff with 10% moisture, well, that's not going to happen, right? You're going to grab 5 to 6% moisture inside your fiber just from it being fiber, right? It's going to grab it out of the atmosphere. It's going to grab it out of the truck it's in, right? So you have to be honest about it, right? And to Keith's point, if you're not honest and you don't negotiate a lower rate, and sometimes a significantly lower rate, and you take that rejection, you can put yourself out of business. You send a 40, say you get an order for 40 loads of mixed paper, you send it all, and it reaches whatever port it's going to reach, and they pop that container, to Keith's point, and they smell that must. The rules now are they'll reject that container, but it automatically in some ports rejects all the other containers associated with that. That's an astronomical cost that it can't be, nobody can eat it. I don't care. The biggest company in waste management can't eat that number. That, you're talking upwards 40, 50 grand per sea container per rejection.
So getting away from the moisture question, how many grades are you selling from your facility? And do you get penalized for material contamination within a bale? Meaning,
Yes.
again, sort of the same question, is it rejected, or do you just get you get a reduced rate for it? And what is that material that's contaminating?
It matters how you do it. If Brett's selling to me and I'm the buyer, like I would come in, I would do a bale break. I would, they'll go through it. They'll watch we all know what percentage of outthrows are in our bales, right? So when they come in, that's where you negotiate the rate, right? You negotiate the rate on 2% outthrows, 7% outthrows. It matters what the market's doing. At times the market will accept a dirtier product. It's just the way it works, right? So when it's a dirtier product, we know that, and we supply a dirtier product, right? When it's not, we also know that, and we know what we have to get at. So, something like cardboard, right? Cardboard gets wet. Listen, dry it out, send it to us. We'll take it, right? Then it won't affect us, right? You'll get what you don't want to do is what Keith said, is send it over there without telling them, hey, I know I have 3% outthrows in my mixed paper, right? Price me accordingly. If you don't do that and they're expecting 1% outthrows and you give them 3% outthrows, it's a problem, right? So you have to be cognizant of what your plant can do, whether it's outside contamination via moisture, styrofoam, whatever it may be. You have to be completely transparent with what you're creating, for a number of different reasons, right? And pricing and rejections are the one and two. None of us on this call ever want to get a rejection. None of us.
Mike?
Your heart stops.
Mike, Brett, or Keith, do you have any more
Yeah.
thoughts in terms of?
I think the other thing with, you know, when you're going overseas is you got to remember that there's different climates over there. So if we're all shipping to Asia, California's shipping to Asia, we're shipping to Asia, you know, Europe. So they don't have the same expectation of what the weather's been in New England for the last 3 weeks. Whereas if you were local, it's at least, you know, they know more what they're getting.
So typically, there's always 3 primary grades of fiber that a facility's gonna move. It's OCC, in my case, number 8 news, and mixed paper. To get away from the contamination side of the table, just real quickly, they want a 2% less contamination rate, and that could be anything, like the guys talked about on the panel. That's inside that fiber bale. And what typically will happen, you're going to get a percentage of a rejection or a downgrade. So I sell it at X, it's got 6% contamination, it's coming down by 10% of the value. Just a straight up example. So to answer your question about the market, getting better slowly. There seems to be a lot better demand for OCC, and I'm hearing the mills are really hungry for OCC. And there's been 3 mills between mixed paper and OCC that just opened up in the last quarter of 2023. So the demand is kind of slowly inching up. Not that any price change from last month to this month, but it's been going up, and it's pretty steady right now.
Yeah, there's
And what if it's
more domestic.
Yeah, that demand historically is cyclical, right? So you're going to have ups and downs in that demand. That, you know, December, you're not going to have the demand, right? Because there's so much out there, right? You know, plastic, right? In the middle of June and July, nobody's dying for PET because it's everywhere. So that you have to remember that demand goes cyclical inside the markets.
So in terms of the paper grades, I'm familiar with cardboard. You know, you also have like a residential mixed paper. Keith, you mentioned you usually do 6 grades. What are the other grades that you guys sell, just out of curiosity? Oh boy, I made you all quiet.
I'm sorry. What was that? I didn't hear.
No, it was directed at all of you, but Keith, you had mentioned you do 6 grades. So I was curious, you know, we're familiar with cardboard, we're familiar with residential mixed paper. What are some of the other top grades that you are baling?
SOP, newspaper, SOP, postal mix, and then you have your your mixed paper, and then your cardboard as well.
Okay. Anybody else different than that? Okay. Just want to make sure I got that question answered.
I just wanted to add another thing in regards to the rejection. You get rejected loads, now you're on the naughty list. And when you get on that list, you guys know that now they start looking at every single thing that you're sending, and they become very critical of everything that you send over there. And, you know, sometimes some stuff that would usually pass now is all of a sudden rejected because now they're taking a look at, you know, what you're sending a lot more.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to start asking questions from our audience. And our first question is, what should we as a municipality do going forward to move away from the blue bins since they have been heavily invested in them? I heard there were lids that could be added to them. I think I would also pose the question, since all of you have hauling, do you provide carts along with your service when you get a contract with the municipality? Do you have other suggestions for munis to get carts instead of going with the small boxes?
You gotta buy
Nobody wants to
totes.
spend money.
Yeah, but you have to, right? So
No,
again,
but would you provide them, Joe, for your customers if you had
at
a
a
municipal
call,
contract?
at a cost, yeah. Yeah, it's got to come at a cost, right? Like, and that's, that was the old problem that everybody on this panel had with glass. They wanted glass cleaned up, but nobody wanted to pay to clean it up, right? So somebody has to incur the cost somewhere, right? So the municipalities, like if you're serious about recycling, you got to spend the money. It just is what it is, right? And I got to be honest with you, at the rate of families right now, you're going a week, right, for recycling. I don't know who isn't going to fill that recycling bin up in about 3 days. Like you should have a bigger receptacle as well. Because what happens, everybody does the same thing. When they run out of room in the recycling, they actually put the good recycling in the garbage.
Mhm. Does anybody have any other input or any questions? And I'm going to open it up to you too, Jen. Do you have suggestions for municipalities looking to do carts or move away from containers? The only thought I have is I know the Recycling Partnership is a great organization that wants to help municipalities expand their use of carts. I know Waterbury got a grant with them. And so you might seek grant funding. Jen, do you have any other thoughts?
You just sort of covered what I was going to say. There are grants available.
Oh, sorry, I
change
stole
out
your idea.
No, that's all right. Grants available for larger containers for those municipalities that do have municipal collection. But remember, most of our municipalities across Connecticut are private subscriptions, so we rely on the haulers themselves. And not every hauler has a transfer station or material recovery facility, so we need to encourage those haulers who are registering within your municipality to make sure they're providing proper containers. We also have haulers don't provide any container, and they are asking their customers to put their recycling in plastic bags. So you guys might want to talk about that. How does that impact your material recovery facility when you're getting material in plastic bags because the private hauler does not have the assets to provide a container, no matter what the size is?
Correct. What Jen's saying has been an issue where haulers are just giving out 100% recyclable plastic bags to put recycling in. It is, again, Pandora's box, right? Every plastic bag that comes in is usually highly contaminated and safety-wise dangerous for our employees. You're trying to open that up turns into all kinds of, like, the people that are on this panel can attest to the insane amount of strange things we get in those plastic bags. Not to mention they destroy our facilities, right? Part of what's in, what's out should be able to, force people to use the proper receptacles. It's the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut should make it so.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. So confirming spiral wound is out. Unless we are talking with a recycling warrior and can explain the nuance of their being able to tell if it is not a multiple material and remove the plastic lid. Yes, spiral wound containers are out.
So like the oatmeal containers are fine, right? Because they're 100% OCC. It's the ones that, and I don't think you need to be a recycling warrior to figure out that there's a liner inside a spiral container.
Oh yeah, they do. They really do, Joe. People often can't tell the difference between metal, plastic, paper, and it's really fascinating. There's definitely a disconnect in understanding what materials are even made out of. So it's easier to say it's all out. And for the anonymous person, I'd say, if you're doing a one-on-one education and somebody has a specific question, then you could say that that material is in, but as far as the what's in, what's out, we say it's all out. Janice asks if this presentation will be available later. Jen, are you providing the PowerPoint for later? I don't know if CRC is doing that.
The recording and the presentations will be available to members, CRC members. So if you're a member, you'll have access.
And if people rip paper, what is the smallest size that will make it through the system? That's a great question. We often have people that rip up their mail because they somehow think it's going to be more secure, and then they throw it in the recycling bin. What small, how rip paper, how small is too small? How big can you capture?
Don't rip it.
Any other thoughts? Any other guidance? Pearls of wisdom? I love how you say it's going to make the ride. Is it going to get through the system?
I think to jump on what was just said about trying to shred it to protect privacy or whatever, just this notion that somehow recycling is providing some modicum of identity protection. Nobody should ever assume that. No facility guarantees that. And there's a lot of wrong assumptions there, but Joe is right. There's no sense in ripping it. It's not helping anything.
Mm-hmm. But when people do rip it, envelope size, it might be a good indicator. I don't know.
I understand why people would rip it for security purposes, right? Everyone feels that, especially in the age of identity theft, you have these kind of issues. I did notice on Amazon, they sell an ink. It wouldn't go against, contaminating the paper product, but it's an ink that will blot out personal information. And it's also, so that's an option that people could try. Again, that's not enough of it so that it will contaminate our product. I don't know how you guys feel about that, the rest of you, but I've seen that instead of ripping it, they just keep the paper and then they use like a small little piece ink, and then it blots out the personal information.
And a train the trainer moment, we will tell our recycling coordinators to communicate with the public that if somebody has a 20-page document and the first 3 pages are confidential, shred those first 3 pages, recycle the rest whole. And then some municipalities do provide containers for shredded paper. If you do have a concern, you can add those ripped envelopes there as well, I would assume, right, Joe? I mean, you take shredded paper containers from our municipal transfer stations. So that's an option. But remember that the smaller the piece of paper, the harder it is for it to be captured in the system.
Thanks. So the next question is there any insulated fiber packaging that is accepted? I would say no. I can only think of mailers. Are there other materials, other insulated materials? I mean, I know that during COVID, when there was a surge in meal service, where it wasn't just like you were getting food, like you were getting a box with a whole meal, and they had a lot of weird fiber in between paper. None of that is accepted. All of that weird fibrous stuff is out. But I can't think of any other products. Answer's out, Rick. Okay. For paper mailers or large envelopes, are mailing labels and stickers okay to leave on since they are tricky to remove?
Yeah, I haven't seen any issues with stamps or stickers. I mean, as long as, 1 or 2 on the envelope. And
Agreed.
if you're buying an envelope,
Okay.
you're going to assume there's a stamp on it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions from our participants. So I'm gonna just follow up with a final question to all of you. What else do you want to make sure that recycling coordinators know when they're talking to the public?
So one thing that whenever I have an opportunity to talk with the public about the recycling process, I try to remind them that there are people, men and women, doing this work. Earlier you guys were talking about spaghetti and some takeout containers. It can be pretty unpleasant just from a human standpoint. And very often that resonates with people, that they think about their neighbor doing this work. These are jobs being done by hardworking men and women in our neighborhoods, and that's something we need to think about and talk about a little bit more. So that is a topic I bring up regularly when meeting with the public. It's not all mechanical. There's still people doing this work.
Thanks, Mark. If you don't jump up, I'm going to call on you, Brett.
I think, the major point to make is to keep the major and large contaminants out, the films, the lithium ions, the propanes, the surprises, like Joe said. I mean, those are the most cumbersome, and piggybacking on Mark, those are the worst for the employees to handle.
Joe?
I think to Mark's point, a lot of people overlook it, and I do the same thing when I go into places. I talk about the safety of our individuals. It's a very stressful situation when somebody gets a needle stick, right? And anybody on this panel who's been there with their employee when they get a needle stick and they have to get the medication for it and they have to go through all the things, right? It's the dangers of what goes into there. The lithium ion batteries. I lost an entire plant a year ago in 5 days, because we didn't listen to what should be in the recycling, right? So, thank God no one was injured in it. But if you look at the pictures online from it, if we were here, people would have been injured severely. So we need help, right? I think what a lot of people miss is the symbiotic relationship that has to be there between us as the processors and the people that are providing us the material to process. I think we waste a lot of time worrying about stickers on an envelope when we should be worrying about lithium ion batteries, and we should be worrying about moisture and things like that. So I just think that's where we are.
Thanks. Keith?
Yeah, it's funny Joe mentioned that, because that's actually something that happened here not too long ago, the needle sticks. And, in a past career, before this job, I was involved in a facility that unfortunately burned to the ground and someone was killed, right? And as a result of bringing in material they should not have brought a customer, someone lost their life, right? And so, one of the issues that, and we really, I think we spoke about this in the last panel, but aerosol cans, it's a big one, right? That should not be coming in. And what happened is people felt because it was metal, it was dumped, and they created an explosion and someone died. And so, usually when I talk to the public too, is I try to educate them. And to Mark's point, as well, people handle these things, and people could get seriously hurt, as a result of someone bringing in material that shouldn't really be brought into the waste stream. So, thanks.
Thanks, gentlemen. Very, very informative. I'm going to hand it back to you, Jen.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate your time today. We are going to wrap it up, but I'm going to throw you one more question. What's the craziest thing that you've experienced and seen come through your line? Besides the bowling ball, those are common, but give me something that's the craziest thing you've seen, and then we're going to wrap it up.
I don't really have a crazy one per se, but every time you're up there, you'll see a shoe or a sandal.
A deer. Hunting season, I've gotten the deers. the gutted skinned deer.
I think one thing that never ceases to amaze me, it's very simple. Bags of garbage. It's a recycling bin. It seems really obvious, but literal bags of garbage.
One time we did have a carcass come through the system and people swore it was an individual, and then everybody had to stop and we had to, you know, go through the due process of making sure that that was actually not a person. So
I got a whole toilet the other, like, couple months ago before the MRF turned off, an entire porcelain toilet.
Recyclable somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the entertainment, guys. We really appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation, and I look forward to our next session. I'm going to remind everyone we will join again in 2 weeks from today, April 24th. We're going to cover glass and metal during that session. And I thank all of you who are our attendees for participating and asking the great questions. So see you April 24th, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.